Hey, what's up? This is Joshua, MVA Joshua, the daily video blog that has gone weekly video blog. That for whatever reason, there's already been two of them, and now there's gonna be another one this week. Though I guess it's Sunday, so this means we're starting a new one. I was just super inspired to bust out the camera right now because I just had a pretty amazing conversation with someone. So I'm talking with a friend about reissuing some records by a band that put out two of my favorite records ever. On top of that, the guitarist has been in basically my three favorite bands of all time. I don't feel inclined to really to be like, oh, it's this person, but if you're someone like me who spent the 1990s in basement emo shows in the Northeast, then this person would be kind of a big deal to you. And they worked on some of my favorite records ever. But so we had this conversation. There was supposed to be a kind of technical conversation about some details about putting out a record. And instead, what we ended up talking about for an hour was about songwriting and creativity and creative process. And one of the things that was really interesting was that he went on this kind of 20-minute tangent describing how the songs and pretty much all his bands came to be. And then as he was describing this thing, he was describing essentially this creative process that for me is a new thing. The stuff I talk about on these vlogs and that I talk about on Instagram and I guess wherever else I talk about this stuff, these are recent developments for me. The idea of you begin a thing with an impulse, but then you let the art become whatever it needs to become. So you might have an idea that you're going to write a certain type of song, but as it takes shape, it changes. I'm always endlessly amused at how often I think I'm going to write I don't know what I think I'm going to write. I think I'm going to write some kind of rap song that's like a traditional rap song. And by the end, the theme has somehow become barbecuing with Charlie Manson or some nonsense. Or hanging out with Tony Hawk doing McTwists on the Animal Chin ramp. So, but for the longest time, my vision of a creative process was that you had to come up with an idea. And when you say you had to come up with an idea, it meant you had to have an image in your head of where you thought the thing that you were making, where it was supposed to go, what it was supposed to be. And that essentially what your job was just to take the thing in your head and bring it to fruition and bring it to reality. And the thing is, there's lots of artists that do have that. I remember reading an interview with the guy from Leviathan, the black metal band, one-man black metal band. And he described his process as being, he has this thing in his head and he's trying to bring that thing to reality. I think that I remember reading that Willem de Kooning said a similar thing. That there was like a picture in his head and he was trying to capture it. And I definitely had that. I still have those all the time. I have them. We're talking about reissuing this record. Currently in my head, it looks a certain way. But chances are, as we work on it, I'm going to let it become something else because trying to hang on to that vision is naive. I know that it will be painful and will be a struggle. But for me, all these themes they're recent. I didn't realize the key to making just about anything good was iteration, was a certain degree of quantity over quality. You make a bunch of stuff and then you figure out from that what stuff was interesting, and then you work on that a little bit and then you put it away and you come back to it, and then while you're doing that you're also working on other things and you're constantly iterating. And the whole time you're trying not to imagine what the outcome is. You're just trying to make the best decisions in the moment, which is now what I try to do. These videos, I have an impulse to go talk about something. And some days I think I'm going to make a 2-minute video, but the conversation unfolds and it requires, say, a 20-minute video. And other days you think, oh man, I got something big to say. It's going to take 20 minutes. But the reality is it takes 2.5. So my point, if I get back to it, so I'm talking to this guy who has written albums worth of songs that resonate deeply with me, and essentially describe this process of you write some riffs, some individual things, and you bring them to the band practice, and the band responds to some of that stuff and they don't respond to other stuff, and as they're doing it, everyone is making adjustments. Then eventually the people around you have made something that you think is better than the initial thing they were responding to, and you rework it in order to respond to what they're making. You don't go, oh, they're destroying my riff. I need to pull them in line. But instead you go, whoa, this thing they're doing right now is super interesting. I think this needs a new riff. I think it needs something different. And the whole process is one of constant mutation. And of course he's describing his creative process, because other people's bands, when they come in with a riff and you don't do the thing they want you to do with the drums, with the guitars, with the bass, they get angry and then they kick you out over creative differences. So what's my point? So the thing changes, and then gradually it needs words. And so as it needs words, you grab a couple of things that you've written, and some of those work, and you start to work them in. And then you build on that, and like one line at a time, you work up a song, and then you tour with the song, and you realize that as you're playing live, that you're not about to say the words you had written, so you throw out some other stuff that you wrote on the spot. So I'm listening to this, and I'm like, this is the process that I adhere to now. That everything is in flux. Things aren't finished until they're finished. They're finished when some part of the process demands them to be. Even then, it doesn't matter that maybe whatever you committed to put on a record isn't actually the last result. It's just where the art was at that moment. Whatever I'm talking about right now is not super important. I mean, it's important, but this video might end up being 12 minutes long, and next week I might decide I need to talk about it again for 2 minutes. I am not going to stop myself and say, oh, but you talked about this last week. I'm going to make the thing again because the situation or the context or my impulse demands it. And I think a lot of people, my theory is that creative block is in large part the symptom of having an idea, having a vision for it in your head, and then as that vision doesn't come to fruition in the exact perfectionist way that you wanted it to, that you then get frustrated, or that you can't even come up with that vision that's in your head, and so therefore you can't work. And there are definitely people for whom those sorts of processes work, but I know for me they don't. For me, they lead to frustration, they lead to aggravation. I could be very honest, as I'm recording this right now, if it wasn't going well, I would switch topics without a doubt. Like, I would just move on to the next thing, and I would be fine with it. I wouldn't get upset that it wasn't going well. I suppose if I really hated it, I wouldn't put it out. But only reason I wouldn't put it out is because I felt like I wasn't 100% engaged in the moment. If I got to that point, then yeah, this thing's not coming out. But I'm not at that point. I'm actually, even though it's kind of late and I'm a little bit tired, I'm fairly engaged and alive at this moment. And so you don't have to have an idea for a thing. You have to have an impulse to create. And then you work the art in the time that you have, or you work until it's done. And I think one of the big sort of takeaways that I got from this conversation was the reason that I connect with the art is because of that process, because the person making it is so fully invested in it, not in a dysfunctional psychotic way, but they worked it and they made it a part of themselves, and they changed it as it needed to change, and they weren't attached to or too precious about anything. And then it's like this piece of clay, and when it's finally molded into whatever form it takes, it's an expression of so many things, and it's an expression of so many moods, and it's an expression of so many different ideas and different forces pushing and pulling on it. I think that's really powerful, and I think it's helpful to realize that you always are only seeing the end product. Not so much anymore. It used to be that way though. You see an album from an artist, and maybe there are weird counterintuitive things happening on it, and you think, man, how did they come up with that idea? And you don't realize that they might have come up with that idea because playing the same song for 2 hours in a row, someone made a mistake, and the mistake was interesting. That the lyric may have just flown out in a moment, and it might not mean anything, but its context gives it tons of meaning. I think that's an important lesson. I think the idea of allowing things to unfold and forgetting about the end point or the picture perfect idea in your head, that's the healthiest thing that you can do. If you can make the picture perfect thing in your head, cool, do it. But I think most of us, it's actually just a fantasy. It's no different than filling out some asinine dating profile with everything you need in a new romantic partner. When in reality, you'd throw away half of that based on good chemistry. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. As always, I appreciate it. Tell a weird friend that they should watch these videos too. Thanks.